Welcome and good afternoon to everyone present here. I thank everyone for joining us in today's webinar. Let us wait for 5 more minutes for few others to join. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. Before we go further, I want to review the functionality of GoToWebinar. Your active participation is important throughout the session. Right now, I have everyone on mute to avoid background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. Throughout the presentation, someone on staff will be managing the chat functionality. You can enter your questions and comment in the question box throughout the presentation. Thank you.
Lokeshwari, shall we get started?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon and welcome to everyone present here. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Lokeshwari, working as a talent acquisition and learning consultant at Sai Equity Institute of Learning Private Limited. Sai Equity is a learning firm established to focus on developing professionals to meet their long-term career goals by using design thinking and by playing the role of facilitator and motivator. Well, today's webinar will be hosted by Mr. Prashanth Kuriyan, presenting on the fundamentals of project management. Mr. Prashanth is a certified PMP presently working with Wipro Technologies. Previously, he has worked at IBM for 5 years and Accenture for 6 years. He is having 18 plus years of total experience in the IT industry. Also, 11 years of management experience in project and program management, account management, and service delivery. He has also experience in managing clients and resource with diverse cultural backgrounds in the US, Europe, and the Asia Pacific region. Now, I request Mr. Prashanth Kuriyan to take over the session.
Okay, thank you, Lokeshwari, for that good introduction. Am I audible, everyone? A couple of them, if you can ping in the chat, but I'm sure that you all can hear me.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, good. Okay, and everyone able to see my screen? First slide being the fundamentals of project management. Okay, good. So I am on the slide which talks about the project management framework, right? So today we are here to understand what really project is and what does it mean to, what is meant to be project management, what's the project management deliverables, and what is the project deliverables, right? So some of the words that we hear, these are all the words, right, for like a project. It's generally used, but the common understanding or the understanding people have about the project is different. If you have kids at home, have got a project, it could be just on a piece of paper. You have to stick some pictures and you just have to submit. And it in cities like Bangalore or Hyderabad these days, the projects for the kids get started at the age of 6 or 5, right? So people have different understanding. So today's session, I will mostly cover a practicality about what really a project is and if that is usable. And I'll try and cover 1 hour. Is really a short period of time, but by the end of this session, I would like to make sure that you get something out of it, something that in your job from tomorrow can apply and then really make some difference. Maybe you can get more time for yourself, or maybe feel more satisfied in doing something differently than what you have been doing so far. So the project is not really what you see on the right hand side, right, in the picture there, or that is not project management. So if you're just as a funny picture there, if you, as you can see, and God save the project manager if he has a boss like that, right, where you don't have any budget, you have 15 minutes to deliver. So that's not project, and then you will have to deal with such stakeholders as well, which I will cover in my the subsequent slide in the stakeholder management. Project really is both a science and an art, right? And if you, any of you here are wanting to take project management as a career, then there is a lot of academics, right? So if you must have heard certifications like PMP or Prince 2. There are standards which is more in-depth, more academic, a lot of processes, and if you are serious in taking those certification, then you'll have to do a lot of those studies. But today I'll keep it very generic. I'll try and give the understanding of that theoretical knowledge and my working experience of 19 years. I'll give some examples, and maybe you could relate those examples to your real-time scenario. And maybe next time, if you get into such scenarios, maybe some of the experience that I have applied could help you, right? So to start with, the project management is not a software, right? It is not your MS Microsoft project tool, right? Though the name is Microsoft project, MPP, what we call generally, that is not project management. It's just a tool that will help a project manager who knows project management to do the work faster. It's like using a calculator, but it's not tool. It is not. It's not a coordination. A lot of people think project manager is more of a coordination job, and sometimes if they want to respect more, then they say it's about having people skill, right? Well, that is important. That's important that we must have people skill, and then people skill is required in a lot of areas. Even if you are an architect or an engineer, today's world, we don't work in silos anymore. It is more of an interdependent world. So hence, people skill is important both in the working environment as well as in our personal home or society, right? So it is basically a systematic process, and as you can see there, generally there are 5 different processes that a project takes through, which is initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. And I'll elaborate on this each of those things as we move forward. So project and operations, if you have to, because a lot of times even the organizations have no clarity. They call operations as project, projects as operation, vice versa. So there's a lot of confusing thing within the organization itself. So in a real world, the project basically is a temporary endeavor. That means it's temporary, it's going to close sometime. So it has a beginning and it has an end. Whereas the operation is ongoing, right? So you might, if you're working for a bank, there is some daily operations. There is a portfolio management with respect to investment, and there is a banking operations where customers come and go. If I were to talk about the IT world, in IT you have projects running, maybe developing a new software to a customer. The operation is something like maintaining infrastructure, the servers, like the Unix servers or the network management. That's a day-to-day operations. So that is ongoing, and the operations mostly focus on efficiency, because you're doing the things repetitively. Hence, there is a demand to do the things in more efficient way, right? So in the phases, I have put some terms like project charter, project plan, work breakdown structure, schedule, risk log, lessons learned. So these are some of the main deliverables, right? So something that you could start doing right from tomorrow. While there are so many output that the real world, the project management talks about, but I've kept certain things simple. So what's a project charter, right? So project charter could be a request from a person whom we call as a sponsor of the project, who provides the financial aid, maybe in terms of money, or if it's the internal project, it could be an approval to use the resources that are there. When I talk about resources, the human resources, or could be IT resources like the software or hardware. The person who approves will send a request that probably could come in the form of an email, or he could tell you over an email, or he could tell you over a phone, or it could be a very exhaustive document. It depends on how matured our organization is with respect to the project management practices, right? So, however, if you are a project manager or a lead, or and if you are working for a smaller company where you don't have any such positions, it is just about you being the engineer. Even in that case, you can create a project charter which could be a simple document which you can highlight what the request or what your understanding about that request is, and what a sponsor or a requester is expecting out of the projects. What could be the deliverables? What is the timeline a sponsor is looking at? What is the budget that could incur? That is something that you could work out if the sponsor is not aware of. And what could be the high-level dependencies I have, right? Like, for example, if you got a request, and if some of you, anybody who is in this webinar is an Unix administrator, and if the project was to upgrade IBM AIX frame, then you could sit with an engineer and understand there are 15 different virtual servers that are sitting on there, and there are some application critical servers. So hence you could put some of your dependencies that while I can plan out a project plan to do this work, but I can do this in 2 months. However, there are dependencies where I'll have to take the business downtime of the business owners who are using this business application sitting on this virtual server. So all those things has to be documented, and you can just map it to the operations. Operations, you don't do all these. Operations is just going and doing, right? So the project management is mostly about doing it in a very methodic manner, following a certain process, and creating such documents and get it finalized or get it approved by the respective the people, the stakeholders that are involved in the project. So let's say once you get this document finalized and get it run through your team, run through the stakeholder who are going to use this product or the outcome of the project. Once you have a buy-in, and it could not be perfect, and most of the times it is not 100%, especially in the IT world or the BPO world, it couldn't be 100%. But even if you can get something to a 60% accuracy level, it should be good, because there is always a process, and I'll talk about it as we go forward. That there is a process that you could use, which is nothing but change management, where you could revise the plan and revise the project budget and schedule and work it accordingly, right? So once you finalize this project charter, the next thing that a project manager or project lead would do is get into a planning phase, right? So one of the main deliverables for the initiating process to exist is to have a documented and finalized and approved by the main stakeholders. So once that is done, then the planning stage begins, where the whole team contributes in making the project plan as to what work we have to do. And it's not, and if it's a technology project, it's not just about technology, it's not just about the steps about the technology, but it's about the environmental, the external factors. Maybe there is the month end or a year end freeze. Mostly if you are working with the European or American customers, generally there is a business freeze during the Christmas and the New Year during that period of time. So they don't want to do any changes. So you need to buffer those things, and then you will accordingly make a project plan, and you'll identify who are the stakeholders, and then you'll document that again and again. It's basically a next level document. You have more information now than what you had at the initiating phase. So you will document those, and again you will finalize and get it approved by the stakeholders and the team members. So it's also important that these plans are bought in by the by the customer, but also by your team members if you are leading a team, right? Because unless they believe that this project can be done with the capability that they have in the organization or within themselves and the time they have, the project's not going to be successful. So it's very, very important. So as a project manager, if there is a it's his or her responsibility to make sure these two things are married, because customer is always demanding. He wants things like yesterday. You ask today, but I need it like yesterday. However, the team is always on the other end where they're more risk averse. They want to keep buffer. They want to forecast those delays, but customers are not agreeing to that. So the project manager is a person who will balance between the speed in which the customer will ask and the delay that the team wants to have it in the teams, right? So there is a balancing act that a project manager will have to do it. And once that is completed, once that is finalized, then the team or the project team comes into the execution phase, and execution and controlling, or monitoring and controlling that we call, will go hand in hand, right? Where after the project plan is done, so we have documented what needs to be done, how we are going to do it, what are the tools that we are going to use, what are the software we might have to procure, maybe we have to get in more knowledge from the contracting companies. All such things are documented, well planned. Now it's a time to get into executing mode. In the execution step, the first step is to develop something called WBS, which is nothing but a work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is nothing but to putting a complex or breaking a complex things into a very simple the deliverables. Or if it is a program, then you divide it into projects and then sub projects, deliverable, milestones, and tasks, right? So that way a project team, a project manager will get better control on the tasks that are supposed to be there. So basically, a good WBS or a work breakdown structure is something which is drilled down till the last task under that deliverable, and the task is not more than half a day work, right? So you couldn't have a task something like build a Unix server and you say start date 1st September to 10th September. That's not a good work breakdown structure, because what happens is, let's say that task is assigned, you as a project manager has assigned that task to engineer, and you're asking the engineer on the 5th day, he said, yeah, I'm in control, yeah, it's 10th day, September 10th is what I will deliver, I'll be done. And you ask him on September 8th, and he said, yeah, I'm done. And on the 10th day, or maybe previous night, he says, well, I don't think I can deliver this deliverable anymore. So you as a project manager, you have failed in front of your customer, you have failed in front of your sponsor. So what is ideal is that if the specific tasks are broken down, right? Specific tasks are broken down into half-day task, right? So it could be it could be building up a hardware and then doing a sanity check of a hardware. So on the 3rd day, when you ask an engineer or ask your team member of any task that have you completed this, and he says no, I have not done this task, so you know that you are already behind the schedule for that particular deliverable. So hence, as a project manager, lead can make certain adjustment to make sure that the deliverable is not impacted and still delivered within a time. And there are multiple ways you could do that. You could probably get the additional engineer or additional resource working on that particular task, or maybe you could schedule the weekend work, promising the team member to give the compensatory off on some other day when the project is over, or you could do some 1 hour of extra working hours in a day. There are multiple things that you can choose to do. So, but the point I'm trying to make is, as a project manager, it's very important that I should not have a task which is more than a half a day timeline. Then you get more control. So the other important thing that a project manager has to manage within the project is to have a risk and an issue log. Remember, I said the project is totally different than what operations is all about. Hence, the planning documentation is the key criteria here. Hence, even before we start the work, we create something called risk and issue log. What is that risk that could impact my project, right? So, for example, last year we had floods in Chennai, right? Couple of times. And if you're a project manager and your team is working out of Chennai and you are in Bangalore, and if let's say you have already gone through one of the flood issue and there are forecasts that it could happen again, there are heavy rains expected in the next week or next 1 month, that's a risk that we should be able to foresee, and then there are strategies that you can implement to mitigate. Okay, sorry guys, I went into unmute mode. So mute modes, I unmuted it, right? So that's those kind of a risk that a project manager should be able to gather from the team, from the internal organizational environment, and then be able to resolve it even before it convert into an issue. So that way, what the plan that was done, the cost and the schedule that was finalized at the initiating and the planning phase, you don't miss that, right? And in the end, the other main important thing in the closure phase is that definitely the closure phase will not close until you deliver the deliverable of a project, right? It could be building a warship, or it could be creating the new process for your the HR department, or it could be anything. That deliverable should be signed off that by the customer or the requester, saying that yes, this is a deliverable that I had envisaged that this project will deliver, and I am okay with this, and hence the project can be closed. So until that sign off is done, the project is not going to close. That's the obvious thing. However, even that is, when it is done, it is important that the lessons learned, it could be bad lessons, it could be good lessons, all those needs to be documented by the project team, and it's not just project manager's job. It's a cohesive effort led by the project manager in documenting. And hey, it's not just it's not the activity that is going to happen or in the closing phase. It starts at the very beginning stage in the executing phase itself. It's just that we are going to close that document. Maybe we may have to update certain things, or maybe we might have missed certain things during the execution of the project. Such things has to be documented and closed, right? So, for example, if I were to go back to the example of Chennai flood case, and that's the time that you ran your project, and you know how chaos it was. I know, because in our case, we had our service desk team working out of Chennai, and then it was full chaotic. People got stuck in the office. They couldn't go back home. There was no food. Of course, the FMG, the facility management team, tried to organize food, but it was not sufficient. People ran out of food, electricity. People are stuck in home, and then yet we have to service our customer. So we learned that in the second time, we got them proactively. We got our systems enabled in the Bangalore delivery center. So second time we were better prepared. So those are the lessons learned that we are talking about. And it could be anything. It could be technology. It could be environmental thing, political thing. Again, we had political situation in Chennai, right? So all those kind of things, those lessons which went bad, as well as what went good, because these lessons learned document is going back to your kitty. If you are a project manager, you have that with you so that you can use that when you're doing the risk management or project planning of your next project. Also, this also becomes a very vital document to the organizational process asset, so that the other project managers running the other projects in the future can refer to it and get this feeded into their project. Okay. So I'm in the next slide where I'm going to talk about the portfolio, program, and a project at a high level, right? So you must have heard these names in your organization, and mostly these words are interchangeably used. So if you have not really given a thought about what the difference is, you might be confused, or you may think that there is no difference and you can interchangeably use it, but that's not the case. I just explained about the project in my earlier slide, and I hope you're all clear what really project means. It has a definite deliverable which has to be accepted by the requester or the customer, and it has a beginning and an end, whereas the operation is repetitive in nature. It's more of ongoing. That's project. The program, as you can see in the diagram itself, program is a group of projects. It is coordinated to take benefit out of it, and it is mostly related, right? For example, you could have a program which, like, let's say, for example, a non-profit organization, it was to have a project. It could have a program called fundraising. So it wants to raise funds for this year to do social activities. So one of the projects could be that it wants to do an event in Bangalore, maybe call SP Balasubramaniam for that event, and then they want to invest certain maybe 1 crore, and then they want to they are estimating that they will earn about 1 crore 20 lakhs. So they want to get profit of 20 lakhs so that can be funded back into their main business of doing the social causes, right? So that managing the whole event could be one project, and one project manager will run that, starting from planning, doing all those things until the end of that show, and then you close your financial books. That could be one project. The other project also could be about approaching the high net worth NRIs, right? So that also will bring in. So this, as a program, it is a fundraising program, but it is two different projects, are different in nature, but it is having the common objective. The main objective behind grouping the projects together is to get benefit in managing together, and having minimized risks, and also have a cost benefit. So because you could use resource sharing, right? So in IT world, like for example, when I was working with IBM, we had a program called obsolescence program, where we would refresh all the IT systems. So I would have a project and a project manager assigned who will go and take care of upgrading all the Windows servers, and there could be another project which will take care of refreshing or the upgrading the Unix storage and backup, because they are similar in technology. And there could be there is another project which will take care of application upgrades and Oracle server upgrades. The program objective is to remove the obsolescence. That means remove the old things and make sure the business systems are as current as possible, to make sure there are no IT security threats, and also to give better performance and more newness to the application. So that's overall objective of the program. Yet they are run in a different bucket. So that's the main difference between a project and program. With respect to portfolio is one level above, and portfolio is a combination of programs and projects, right? And as a portfolio manager, you will not these are not interrelated. For example, there could be a portfolio manager in a let's say FMCG company, like Hindustan Unilever company, and a marketing manager who's having a portfolio of grooming products and a cleaning products, right? So grooming, like facial face wash and soap products and things like that, and they are not in relation. So he could also have a project to introduce a new product in the rural market, right? So he might feel that, okay, I have to, his overall objective as a portfolio manager is to get more revenues, and he also has a responsibility to understand the market and introduce new products that will run in certain in the certain markets. So he would probably open a project to begin with the market study, and see what kind of a product that he may have to introduce in that market, what should be the cost. So it could be a project, whereas he already has two portfolios that is running, which is the ongoing business with the existing products. Okay, and the next slide here, I'll talk about how these projects are linked with the organizational strategy, right? So ultimately, the divisional managers or the functional managers cannot, in an ideal situation, it's not necessary, it's always true in an ideal situation, that these projects should roll up to organization's vision, mission, and organizational strategy, right? So it's all follow, as you can see in that picture, the vision, mission at the top, and then the projects at the bottom level, and then you have organizational resources, right? So every organization has its own, a good organization, right? The good and profitable organization has a clear vision and a mission statement. Michael Dell of Dell once said, we are not a technology company, we are a customer company. He was very clear, and it goes back to a story. It's not a story, it's a real thing. When Michael Dell was very young and he was doing the project in the university, he went around and looking for a computer for $200 because he had to do something, some kind of a science project for his academic. And he started looking around for a computer, and he couldn't get it because at that point in time there was IBM, there is maybe Apple and other companies. They wouldn't sell for $200. It is more than $700. And then Michael Dell, what he did was he went to the second market and bought the maybe used motherboard and then some different parts, and then he came and assembled. And that's when the thought came to him that if a person like me cannot get a product at a cheaper price, and that's what I need. I don't need a very super fast and a lot of features computer, but I need a basic thing, and he could design that. And hence he gave birth to a company called Dell, and then their vision, and then he states it very clearly that we are not a technology, we do not want to be a technology company, even though we sell technology products, but we are a customer company. That means we will customize to our customer requirement. So that's the vision and mission the founder or the company CEO has. Hence all projects will be revolving around that. So it will not be projects that you will find in Apple. Apple is a different kind of a company. Apple or a BMW, these are all very technology company where they design the products and they innovate and then get the user to use that, right? So now we're talking about Apple, the new phone coming in, and they're talking about the features which probably we don't need it, but they sell it in a way that it becomes a necessity for the customer. So every organization has different style. So hence the projects that we are starting are aligned to the organizational strategies. And as you can see, there should be a definite business benefits that you should get out of the project. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Or many of the organizations where the project management competency is strong, the projects will not get approved, right? So, and the business benefits, as you can see on my right hand side on the slide, this could be very tangible business benefits, like 25% increase in the revenue. These are all the statements that will go into the project charter. Or as you can see, bullet number 6, staff savings. That means do the same work with the reduced staff and deploy the staff to the new business lines as investments and things like that. And it could be less quantifiable, as you can see there. This is something that you cannot quantify, but there could be other ways and means that maybe you can do survey. Like, for example, improvement in employee morale. You may not be able to directly able to measure that, but over the period of time, you could probably map it. The HR division can map it with the exits that are happening in the company, or the productivity improvement. So those are the intangible things that will really qualitatively quantify those certain things. Would be certain customer satisfaction and things like that. Okay, so now coming to the role of a project manager, right? So we understood what project is, what project management. Project management is really a structured process, and it's not like what somebody think a project management is. So, and there is a dedicated project manager if the project is a good scale or a size, has a good budget, then you have a project manager, right? And there's a funny picture that you can see. Most of our projects, and it's reality. If you have worked in the organization, say, you don't have to be a project manager. As a project team member, you could see that project has one next 1 month it has to be delivered, but then you are already behind schedule, right? Yet there is a way a good project manager can manage that. It may not be that the project manager can make some magic and close the project on time as expected by a customer, but there is a way that a project manager, a good project manager, or who understands project management, can manage the stakeholder expectation, get him to the real time the timeline, and then can buy it and run that project. So some of the key responsibilities that I would like to talk here as a project manager is that a project manager, and we talked about this in the planning, initiating, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and the closing phase that a project goes through. So as you can rightly see in the bullet number 1, planning and defining the scope, which is very, very important, right? For example, if you want to build a house and you already bought a land and you go to a architect come a contractor, so he does the both. So you don't tell him, you might go and tell him, oh yeah, I need a house, and it should be 3 floors. Ground floor, I would like to keep it as parking, and I need mosaic flooring, and I need fan in each of these bedrooms. I need 2 bedrooms in each floors. So that's the scope you as a customer, or you as a person who is not very knowledgeable about the construction business could give. And that's what happens when we look at our customers. So in an IT world, customer or an application or a business owner, he doesn't have in-depth knowledge about the technology. So in the case, the previous example, if you went to a contractor, then a contractor will sit and define the scope to a minute level as to how much square foot it would come, what is the material I'm going to put, right? Whether it's going to be pillar based, or I'm going to construct one above the other, and what kind of, if it's a mosaic, so there are a variety of mosaics we might get. So if it is a marble flooring that you want to do, there could be variety right from 500 rupees per square feet to 50,000 rupees per square feet. So you define that very clearly. Otherwise, you might be thinking that you will get a Italian marble, and you might just get a mosaic flooring, and there is confusion, and there could be disagreement, and the project go into a stall mode, and you may not be able to close the project, and hence there will be wastage of resources. And project management is all about avoiding all those things. How do I make sure that I clearly set the expectation what the product or a service a customer or a requester is going to get, and at what cost and at what timeline that I'm going to get. So that expectation is done in the planning phase by defining a clear scope, and this document can go up to 100 pages or 1,000 pages. We do not know. If it's a complex project, it could run into hundreds of pages. But if it is a simple project, we must try, and anybody assign you a project or anybody assign you a task, it is must that you get a common ground. It could be a simple email, and you can say, hey, this is what I think. If you are from a application development background, then you could probably do a prototype. You could get a designer to do how your interface will look, and you can give that in a document. This is how your interface of your application will look. This could be a response time, and what could be your how many connections that these backend applications can accept, and what kind of load balancing I could do, what kind of a memory, what kind of CPU computing power that we need. All those things, a minute level that you can think of, if you can document and get to a customer to sign. And that's what a project manager will do in this in defining the scope. And then the next step that comes is to do a resource planning, right? So now I define the scope. What kind of resources do I need? And if I'm going back to the earlier scenario, once a contractor signs off with you, what kind of resources do you need? How many masons do I need? How many engineers I need? And what kind of physical resources? So it could be cement and iron and all those kind of things that I have to buy, and how that will all translate into cost, and what could be the timeline, looking at the resources that I have, how much time that we are looking at. So those are things that are done in step 2, or bullet number 2 and 3 is what it is talking about. And I already covered that, looking at the resources, time that is required. The faster that you need, more resources that you need, right? And then the cost could go up. And so those are the decisions that the project manager will make and come up with the budget. And then this will all go and get signed off in the project charter at the beginning, and then it will get revised and will get further signed off in the project management plan that we talked in the earlier slide. And we talked about managing the risks and issue. Project manager will constantly identify risks in all phases, right from the initiating, even in the project charter. The risks and issues should be there, and if there is not there, that means the project manager is not doing a correct role, because there will definitely be some risks to a project. And then thorough risk analysis will be done. What it means is, risk analysis, something like, okay, this risk has to occur in my project, then what is the additional funding that I might need? And there is a concept called contingency fund. Beside the budget, let's say a budget is about 1 crore rupees for your building, but I will still, looking at the risk that I have highlighted, I will still keep about 10 lakhs as my contingency fund, that if that risk it realizes, or that situation comes, then I will use the money from that fund. And if the risk was mitigated, there is no risk that occurred, that 10 lakhs Yes, so documentation is the key role of a project manager. He sets the process. He sets the he sends the weekly reports communicating the progress of the project or a deliverable to the customers and to the internal stakeholders. Could be to program manager and to the team members, to make sure everybody is on the same page, right? So we don't want your engineers or your resources to think in one angle and your customer is thinking in another way. And it happens. Even though you have done a proper planning, you're never going to have a common understanding. That's why this documentation or these reports are sent on a weekly basis, and then followed up by a weekly meeting, where in case there is a disagreement or a disconnect, those are captured in the early stage, and the certain adjustment and required changes are done, so that there is not much deviation in the outcome of the project. Okay, so the other thing, the developing the schedule, bullet number 10 that we talked about, then estimating the cost, controlling the quality. That's also an important